the beginning of the race cost him, and again that tyre temperature he struggled with. He did a great job with the fastest lap at the end of the race, but I think from where he started in P12 to gain those places was probably the maximum today.
Sergio Perez is yet again one of the most infamous drivers on the grid, for all the wrong reasons. The Mexican's pace was nowhere to be found in Montreal, the race that was supposed to be a restart to his season, and quite frankly, we're expecting a deja vu effect with the number 2 Red Bull driver yet again. This is something that is currently being explored and witnessed by the team itself, and after Horner's brutal statement on Perez's future, one couldn't help but wonder, is this the last straw for the good guy in Red Bull? Perez won everyone's hearts when he did the amazing job of being the perfect wingman for Verstappen all over again back in 2021. But when all things came to an end and Perez was presented with a real championship opportunity for the first time in his career, he wasn't able to capitalize on it. Last year, it was the car. And this year, it's definitely his mentality that's costing him so much time and pace behind Verstappen. For example, during the Montreal GP, Perez was 0.7 of a second slower than Verstappen, who had no issue whatsoever keeping everyone behind at bay. What seems to be a very concerning matter is the fact that Perez is not able to finish second in every race, when his teammate is the one that wins qualifying sessions by more than a second margin compared to the second place driver on the grid. But we saw a competitive version of Perez at the beginning of the season, right? After all, he did win a couple of races in Jeddah and Baku, so where seems to be the issue? These were the races in which Verstappen was the driver who found it hard to battle against his teammate, but was still second and made sure that no car that was not named RB19 would finish ahead of him. This is something that Perez is failing to do, and with him completing only one pass in the entire race on the weakest car on the grid, Albon, the future of the Mexican is under huge threat. For things to be worse, Perez expected this race to go heavily in his favour. This was supposed to be the long-awaited restart of his championship hopes and a challenge for Verstappen, but it was never written in the stars. We were literally hyped up for nothing, and your not being able to enter Q3 in 3 consecutive races speaks volumes about your championship aspirations. This time, however, Perez has no one to blame other than himself, and this is something that he spoke about after the race in Montreal, as he went on to add, "It was longer, a lot longer than I thought the race. I think the safety car basically took all the opportunity away because it was good looking. We raced on that hard tyre and unfortunately it didn't pay off. Yeah, I'm very concerned about that lack of pace. We just didn't have the pace and we don't understand why. That's the weird thing, so we have to figure it out. We're going to sit down and look back because we know what we're capable of, and it's just important for us to understand what's going on." Obviously, what Perez doesn't want to understand is that he challenged the wrong driver on the wrong team. Yes, I'm the first one to admit that he needs to be given an equal opportunity to beat Verstappen, and that was done this season as well. Horner, Marko, and every Red Bull executive have publicly said that both of the drivers are free to race, something that happened during the Miami GP, and something that saw Verstappen teaching everyone else a lesson on how to preserve 40-lap-old tyres, something that Perez was the master of a couple of years ago. Now, all we're witnessing is a blunt shade from Perez, who is yet to prove that he could hold on to that second spot in the championship, let alone fight for the throne with Verstappen. He's 69 points behind the leader, but only 5 points ahead of third place Alonso, who missed out on the podium finish only 2 times this season, in Barcelona and Azerbaijan. And when he was asked about whether he could fight Perez for that second spot in the Drivers' Championship, his answer was more than scary for the veteran driver. Yes. The real issue for Perez, however, is that the team has now received a driver who is barely able to finish in the top 6 and is already a liability when it comes to entering Q3. With the dominance that the RB19 has displayed in front of the entire world, it should be a no-brainer for Perez to finish anywhere below the second spot on the grid. Verstappen is winning races with double-digit margins, and you're not able to pass 2 Ferraris, an Aston Martin or a Mercedes. Had George Russell not crashed, it would have been 2 Mercedes drivers, just like it was in Barcelona. The fact that he started in the same row as the Ferrari drivers only goes to emphasize his weakness even further. He's not the type of driver he claims to be. This is why Horner and Marko have been constantly slamming him for his championship hopes, something that Marko says is a dream Perez needs to wake up from. And Horner added that now that it's evident who's the number one in the team, the Mexican driver could focus on what matters the most for the team, winning the first and second spots in the Drivers' Championship, and with that, securing the Constructors' Championship as early as possible. But if there is one thing that we've learned about Perez in the last 3 races, is that his competitiveness is nowhere to be found, something that Horner opened up about in his recent rant against his number 2 driver. Although he claims that both of the drivers were given, and are still given an equal opportunity to drive, it's obvious who'd have preferential treatment if all things came down to it, and it would be for all the right reasons. Christian Horner believed that Albon had a much better and more exciting race for Williams than Perez did for Red Bull, which is why his attention was much more focused on his old driver, one that might see a surprise return at Red Bull. Holding off Russell and Ocon for more than 15 laps is not a mission you could accomplish easily, especially when you're driving such a bad car, and that's something that caught the eye of Horner. When talking about this matter, the Brit added, Alex, congrats to him. I did watch as much of his races as our races. Remember, Horner was the one that reminded Perez not to be under huge pressure in terms of performing to the level of Verstappen, and he's constantly reminded the Mexican driver that the hardest job that you could possibly have right now in F1 is being Verstappen's teammate. But that comes with its own perks as well. You get to drive the best car on the grid, and if you're not finishing second every race while your teammate is winning with a 10 or 24 second margin, then something is wrong with your level of competitiveness. Not everyone can handle the pressure of being a champion. And although Max's first championship was definitely altered by the FIA's controversial call, he never made a mistake against Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, throughout the entire course of the season. What did Leclerc and Perez do once they were given the opportunity to rise and shine? Driver mistake after driver mistake, ones that have cost them potentially too much, and ones that unfortunately for Perez might see his own demise in Red Bull. With how Tsunoda been proving to be a leader for a broken team like AlphaTauri, and with the rich academy of Red Bull consisting of Iwasa, Lawson or Hauger, the Austrian team might very well revert to its traditional ways of hiring within, and placing someone from their own academy rather than hire an experienced driver that might do the same as Perez is doing right now. Truth be told, Perez was and still is probably the best teammate that Verstappen has had in his career. But with the team not being able to rely on him as much as they can on Verstappen, the Constructors' Championship is something that could be under huge threat. Yes, Aston Martin might not rely as much on Stroll as well, but at least his father owns the team and guarantees his seat, and unlike him, Perez is not likely to keep it no matter how badly he performs. Mercedes and Ferrari can always bet on both of their drivers finishing high in the points, especially now that all of them have proven to be faster than Perez, which means that if the Mexican doesn't pick up the pace, Horner and Marko will definitely listen to Verstappen's camp and change Perez as soon as possible. I guess this is what you get when you don't listen to team orders on time, and there's pretty much nothing you can do about it. You either comply with the rules or you crumble under tremendous pressure.